You don't have to do that. Oh,
And we're what?
yes. Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Man, that question comes in so quickly. Hey, everybody. Back for episode 5. Returning guest Alex here with Curtis and me. Plenty to talk about. So get those questions in. Where do we want to start today, guys?
Ooh, we got a lot to get through. Curtis and I touched base on this real quick before we got started, and I think we're hoping to talk about Title 42 first, just because there's kind of some breaking stuff on that.
About a okey doke, like a fake out by the government on that Title 42. I think, and if my memory serves me correctly, I was reading the request for a stay, and the stay request for the government was premised on them unwinding Title 42, and they did not intend to appeal it. And lo and behold, they convinced the opposing counsel, the plaintiff's attorney, not to oppose the stay and to allow them to do that. And the judge was sort of frustrated that it was unopposed and granted the stay because it was unopposed. And look at what happened. So we could have had Title 42 unwound already.
And for those that are just finding out, what happened is the government has said that they now respectfully notify the court that the Solicitor General, that's Elizabeth Prologer, could get that wrong, has authorized an appeal. So they are appealing. So the Biden administration, who wants to get rid of Title 42, is appealing an order that's telling them they have to get rid of 42.
Right. Which is a campaign promise, right? I think if the Biden campaign, if we pull it up, probably scrub, but on the Wayback Machine, they promised to unwind Title 42. Yep. And just some crazy backtracking on immigration from the Biden administration, which ties into diversity visa too. It's sort of like the same move he pulled with, Good Luck and DB 2020 Good Gomez cases. Kind of made a promise that he was going to right the wrongs, and when the courts righted the wrongs for him, he said, "Just kidding, you're not allowed to do that. I can right the wrong, and I'm not going to do it. It's ridiculous."
Yeah, the timing with the midterms is really interesting too. Just wondering why that didn't come out about 2 weeks earlier.
Right. Well, I guess he could have been playing it for both sides. I don't know. It's just so confusing to figure out where they stand on these issues. And you can't break promises like that. And everybody says, well, this is the lesser of two evils when we go to vote in 2024. But when you break promises, it really leaves a really bad taste in people's mouths.
For sure.
And people aren't one-issue voters. And if you're not going to give them what they want on immigration, they may turn to another issue that they don't align with you very well on. So I don't know what they're doing there, but we'll see how it all plays out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess we should explain what Title 42 is for a lot of people. Do you want to do that for us, Alex?
Oh boy, this is like a law school exam. All right.
That's a cold call.
That's how it feels too. So Title 42 was something that started under the Trump administration. I'm not sure exactly when it started under the pandemic, but essentially it was a directive to either turn folks away at U.S. land borders or, ask them to wait, like under the Remain in Mexico policy. And the explanation they gave was public health, that we want to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Therefore, we want to prevent folks from coming in. And my kind of cynical take on it is it was never about health in the first place. It was really just about stemming the flow of migration into the U.S. southern border.
And it's actually issued by the CDC, the Center of Disease Control, which is also interesting because we have Fauci on camera saying that this policy doesn't really stop the spread of COVID-19. And here we are in year 3 of the pandemic, and we kind of know that it's here to stay. And the premise for turning people away has really nothing to do with COVID-19 at all. And it's more just to say we're being tough at the border. And even when, there's a lot of questions of whether the Biden administration is really being tough, or what this Title 42 is actually doing at all. So,
right. And this is, it's also not the first time that like the Biden administration has made kind of this weird roundabout regulation, either through the CDC or, kind of under CDC directives. Like I'm thinking about, national interest exceptions for like non-immigrant visas, for example. Like I have memories of trying to get clients through to the United States, and instead of coming straight from Ireland, for example, they'd have to come from Ireland to Mexico, quarantine in a hotel for 2 weeks, and then try to enter to the United States. And I'm like, I'm not sure how sending people through more hotels, more airports prevents the spread of anything. And they've since rolled that back.
Right.
So it begs the question, like, why is this any different? And unfortunately, it's like right in line with this administration's kind of priorities right now, which is, the non-immigrant and employment-based visas over asylum seekers.
Right.
So we got a lot to get through. Can I go ahead to the next one?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, cool. So actually, I'm just going to spend a minute on this. If you're interested, go to our website and click on More up in the upper right corner and blog, and you'll come here. Basically, on Monday, was that a week ago Monday? No, the 30th? That was Wednesday. I don't even know. ICE released the data of 6,000 migrants that are in custody of like their personal information. They've kind of said that we didn't do it on purpose. We're sorry, But something I want to point out is it's unlawful under the Privacy Act. And if you have damages, you could get civil remedies. So talk to us or another attorney. Go to this blog entry to find out more. If you are detained by ICE and your personal information was put out there in the public. If you were an asylum seeker, for example, and then all of a sudden the people you're seeking or you're fleeing from now know where you are, that's a problem. So, and ICE is supposed to notify everybody that was impacted.
And it was up for 5 or 6 hours. So unfortunately, this is probably archived somewhere. If you're not notified, it might not be that hard to find out.
Right. There's a few journalists that have a copy of the list, but I can't get a hold of one. So that's good that I can't get a hold of one, because it means that they're locked up, maybe.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Going backwards on the list that you gave here, December visa bulletin.
Yeah. Actually, do you mind if we pivot just to the Real ID stuff, just because there's a nice little overlap with the data privacy stuff?
There is. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Okay. I'll give you the super short version. So, long story short, they've extended the deadline to get Real IDs by yet another 2 years. They pushed it out to May 2025. As usual, DHS is blaming COVID, blaming the DMVs, now that they have individual appointments for licenses. But basically they're saying we're still going to require Real ID Act compliance. We're still going to require folks to give a lot of personal information to show that they qualify for a Real ID. And, eventually they're going to try to require this for domestic travel. This started a long time ago in 2005. This was passed by Congress as part of this kind of collection of recommendations from a post 9/11 commission. And it's lots of other parts of this have been rolled out, like anti-counterfeiting technology, and even DHS in its own statements, while saying, hey, we need an extension on this Real ID thing. Don't worry about it. We've done all these other things to secure air travel, you're still safe. Which begs the question, why do we need to do this at all? But before we get there, let's talk about why the Real ID Act is, some of the critiques of the program. Because on its face, it doesn't sound that harmful. It's, ID verification to make sure that you qualify and that you are who you say you are. But here are the the issues that critics have with it. One, unnecessary, like we touched on. Two, it's really expensive for states to implement this stuff. All 50 states didn't start doing it until 2020. And if your state's not doing it, it's kind of impossible for you to get it and comply. And this is where the privacy issues come in. So you have to give proof of ID, your date of birth, your social security number, which not everybody has, 2 items proving your residency, and then like proof of your written signature. And the problem is that DHS right now under the current proposals is going to keep all of this in one central database. And as Curtis just explained, they're really, really bad at data security, to the point where individual states, I'll talk about Illinois just because that's where I am. Illinois has really, really stringent data and biometric privacy laws. And they opposed the Real ID Act lawsuit through ACLU Illinois, saying that they basically didn't trust DHS security protocol. They did not trust it to keep like Illinois state citizens' data safe. And unfortunately, it seems like they had a point. The big problem for immigrants on this one, though, is not everybody is eligible for a social security number. It's unclear to me whether they're going to accept ITINs. I couldn't really find a hard answer one way or another. And the problem there is you need a Real ID not just to travel domestically, but eventually you'll need it to get into federal courthouses. And so if you're in a situation where like Venezuelans, for example, are, you know, now allegedly having their passports taken at the border, if it expires and you don't have a way to renew your passport or get some other kind of ID that the federal courthouse will accept, you don't qualify for a Real ID, I'm not sure what you're supposed to do. And if you go on Twitter, there's just been some really incredible jokes about this program. My favorite being that Real ID is the government's version of the $8 Twitter blue check mark. I think that's all of it. But yeah, it's a little worrying since they just had a huge data leak like a week ago.
Let's not make fun of the $8 blue check mark.
Did you buy
I'm not
it?
saying I'm not gonna admit or deny where I got mine, but that's
I'm not gonna lie, I thought about it until I
Curtis,
saw
you're muted, Curtis. One thing I want to say about the Real ID Act is that it is, I think, anytime the government wants to confirm your identity, it's going to affect immigrants to the United States. And the one big thing, and it's already happened in my family. My father was born in Dominican Republic, and he went to go get the Real ID Act, and through the immigration process, your name actually changes and it can change in various ways through the immigration process. So there was a great concern about the person who was adjudicating this application for this Real ID about the name changes. And what was infuriating to my father is that he had spent 30 years in the Marine Corps, and here was somebody questioning whether or not they were in fact a United States citizen, whether those documents lined up. And while eventually they folded, I think once you started, putting the pressure on him, it's just something. Even somebody who spent, the better part of the last 50 years here in the United States are still going to run up into these complications with Real ID. So it's something we should pay attention as immigration advocates and immigration attorneys to see how this is implemented. And anytime you have a database within people's immigration statuses, nefarious actors, bad actors can use that to, persecute immigrants as well. So something we should keep an eye on.
And that's far from the last place that like the U.S. government falls down on immigrant service members and veterans. Like,
right.
Hey,
sure.
Curtis, I think you're unmuted. Were you trying to jump in?
No, I'm not really.
Okay.
Veterans is a good thing. What's that called? A transition to what Congress is doing, because Congress in the House just passed a bill that would make things smoother for deported veterans. I have to say that it's so weird that the United States government entices people to serve in the military, and then when they get out, they deport them. It doesn't happen a lot, and usually I think the majority of cases have to do with like a minor drug offense or something, like if they use marijuana. Well, immigrants face different consequences for minor offenses than people born in the United States. So anyway, Congress is going to fix that, and so that's a good thing.
And it's especially where act compassion for immigrants. It sees the bar is so high to get Congress to act compassionately to our immigrants. You really have to almost sacrifice your life for the country, or risk your life at the very least, before they even pay attention to you, I guess, if you're an immigrant these days. So let's hope that they, at least for them, they can get something moving on that, because it seems like anytime that we get something gets traction in Congress, it hits a wall. Do we know where it's at?
So it just passed the House. The other thing is there's a Senate bill that Senator Duckworth, who's also a veteran, and I think first generation, has been working on. That's got pretty broad bipartisan support, and it's really similar. So I don't know if they're working together on that. But it looks like it just passed the House yesterday. And it's specifically for permanent residents who have been deported but honorably discharged and were deported for nonviolent offenses. So like substance use offenses. The problem with that, though, is a lot of folks who, have, chronic pain or trauma incident to service turn to substance use to regulate those issues. And so it seems, pretty unfair that, like you said, Rafael, you kind of sacrifice your body to the government. And then, when maybe they're not providing adequate resources for you to deal with the aftermath of that service, and then you're punished for it. Like, it's really problematic. We could do a lot better.
Yeah, we could. And you in other contexts, you can there could be bills passed specifically for individuals, and it seems like we've just gotten away from showing compassion to people in general through our immigrants in Congress. So hopefully they can get some traction on that and do something right. And many of these people have corrected their lives. I can't remember was the segment on Immigration Nation, the show where they showed the deported veterans going to the governors to try to get their crimes pardoned, and they weren't even getting traction there, because there's some ways that you could get roundabout ways that you could have seek some relief, and they weren't even getting traction there. So hopefully they get something passed through Congress.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I'll also plug just real quick, AILA has a military assistance program, MAP. So that's a group of volunteer attorneys that kind of specialize in military parole in place. I worked on one adjustment of status, and depending on your branch and how long you've been in, sometimes the military will cover those government filing fees. So, if you are a service member, you can either reach out to us or, just know that there's resources out there.
Yeah, and I worked as an intern in the Pentagon for the Marine Corps Legal Division, and that's what we did over there. Because we helped service members get their citizenship. So there's a lot of resources out there to get help. There just needs to be an avenue in the law for them to get assistance. So hopefully we can get something going.
For sure.
So since we're talking about Congress, there's two more things that are working in Congress, but don't know what's going to happen with them. First, if you're on Twitter, you'll know that the EAGLE Act is being considered. But and if you don't know what that is, that's to help those mostly Indian people that are in the U.S. on H-1B non-immigrant work visas for long time, 10 or 20 years, that do not have a path to a green card. Well, they have to wait 10 or 20 years. So it's understandable that they want a solution to that. The EAGLE Act has not made allowances for some of the consequences, though. And so it's got opposition recently from the American Hospital Association, because it would limit the number of nurses that could immigrate. It's what else? The Congressional Black Caucus has opposed it. The Biden administration has come out for it. So don't know where it's going to end up, but that's what's being discussed in Congress. And
it did not make it into NDAA, right? The National Defense Authorization, where they think that's, if you want to get something really passed, that it needs to, right now in this lame duck Congress, it looks like it needs to be a rider on that bill. A rider on a bill just means that it's included in an unrelated bill. So it didn't. I don't think it got inclusion on that. So it looks like it's going to be a really uphill climb for the Eagle Act to make its way to the Biden's desk. It doesn't look like it's going to be happening. And there's a lot of strong feelings on both sides, which both sides have justifiable reasons, right? One can certainly see why, if you filed an application for or a petition for an immigrant visa 10 years before somebody else who's getting the petition right away, why that would be fundamentally unfair for that person. But on the other side, you can see that you wouldn't want a entire visa category to be subsumed by one country or and push everybody back. So those are a tension. And I think there's ways that they can mitigate those tensions if people were to work together. But then the question becomes, when you mitigate those tensions, is there support in Congress for that a bill that both sides would get behind? And it becomes really difficult. Yeah, it's a really difficult question to answer for a lot of people. But one thing that I have to say about that is that there has to be some bridge building in that in for people who want to get it passed, and both people that want to see a better bill to start talking together, because if you make enemies with each other, I mean, it's probably not going to go very far.
No, and frankly, the government benefits from you guys being like keyboard warriors on Twitter against each other, because you're directing your aggression at each other instead of at them.
Right. Exactly. And I think you can probably craft a bill that helps everybody, right? If we increase,
I feel like that too. Just from being in these conversations on Twitter, I think it's got to the point where we know all the negative outcomes. They just need to accommodate all of them, right? You know that they're the EB3 and EB5s are disadvantaged. We know Black immigration is disadvantaged. I mean, they need like a cat herd.
Yeah. I think the real solution is like an increase of visa numbers, right? I think if you have increased visa numbers, and if you can formulate a way that those are beneficial to the people who have, greater backlogs like India and China. If you can, without taking away the visas from everyone else, I don't think there would be much of a resistance to that, except from anti-immigration people, in which then you run the complications about getting that through Congress. So, but it's not an easy question. I think it's really, really difficult to answer, because if it was easy, they would have it done by now.
Right. Curtis, this might be a good place to pivot to the visa bulletin.
December visa bulletin. Did you have anything you wanted to say about it?
I mean,
it's always good to give an update so we could give some context to the reason why so many people have these strong passions about it, because you can see the time difference on a lot of those applications.
Yeah, no, it's really stark. I mean, I'm pulling it up over here now.
So it's the same as the November for family preference categories, right?
I believe so. F2A is still current.
So the diversity visa did move a little bit. It's up to 20,000 for it's like.
Do you want to screen share? Might be.
Oh, yeah, I can do that.
You don't have to. I just thought it might help. Let me see. I have it up on my phone here, otherwise I can't see it. There we go.
So I have one thing to say about diversity visas. If we're looking at this year's slower moving pace, that means embassies have enough applications that are documentarily qualified or documentarily complete or ready to be processed. I don't think they do documentarily complete anymore, right? That are ready to be processed at post to fill the available adjudications. We knew from the last episode that Curtis and I did that they're going to have to increase the pace of adjudication from October to get to the full 55,000. But at least there's enough applications ready to be adjudicated that post can fill them. So we'll hope that they increase adjudications, but that's one good way to look at the slow moving visa bulletin.
Yeah, and if nothing else, last year proved that they can hit that cap. So hopefully they do it again this year.
Right. Alex had missed this episode, but to pace 55,000 for the year, you need to do 5,939 DVs a month. And for October, they only did 1,356. So they're only doing 22% of what they need to do. And that's not ideal. So, but we were talking, was there something else you want to say about the visa bulletin?
Right. So I just give context about the difference in waiting times for employment-based visas. You can see that I think it's down a little further. I think it's actually underneath. Yeah, right there.
There we go.
The dates for filing. So you can see that some categories wait much longer than other categories, right? If you have an EB2, India's waiting, had to have the petition filed in 2011, while other are essentially last month. Well, that's the final action date. Yeah, you can see that the differences in the waiting times.
And what's interesting about EB1 is that like it's kind of always current. I think the longest I've ever seen it backlogged is like a year or two. But what we've seen from the data, this was part of my kind of law school thesis, is that the scrutiny on EB1 extraordinary ability green cards is much higher for some countries than others. The RFE rate for India is off the charts compared to the average. So, you know, they can keep it current because they can kind of buy themselves time by issuing these requests for evidence.
Well, actually,
so it's something to think about.
This is my concern. This is why I find the diversity visa program, you know, sort of beautiful, is that, you know, you make the bar somewhat low, and it allows for people from all over the country to meet that bar, right? When we start putting these increased, what we perceive to be merit-based requirements on immigration, we're going to see inherent bias be applied to that, and you know who ends up losing on that is brown and black people. So,
Yep.
Anytime somebody says we need to get a merit-based system so we can get better quality immigration to the United States, I really scrutinized what they mean by that and what they find to be, or who they find to be qualifying for those kind of immigration, because oftentimes we know who ends up on the short end of the stick on that.
For sure.
So another thing we had on our list to talk about was extended TPS for Haitians. This is something where Biden is doing the right thing.
Well, after the treatment of Haitians at the border,
the least they can do.
Something he needed to save face, because that was horrific what he did. So, yeah, that's good news for Haitians, and it's Haitians that arrived before November. I forgot the date of this year. So essentially, what I've read is that 100,000 people will qualify for those protections, those TPS protections. So that's great news. And our office does do TPS. So if you want to do a TPS application and you think you qualify for it, please contact us.
Right.
Yeah.
And what does TPS do?
Temporary protected status. It prevents you from deportation and allows you to work in the United States.
It's a good thing.
Yeah. And they also extended it for a bunch of other countries: Afghanistan, Ukraine, Myanmar, Cameroon, Venezuela. And yeah, you're right, Rafael. They had to do something to save face, because not only was it just horrific on its own how they treated Haitian nationals, but in really horrible and stark contrast to what they were doing for Ukrainian nationals.
Right.
You know, for the Biden administration, the optics are really, really bad. So I'm glad they did something, but they kind of had to.
I think that covers all the news, unless either of y'all had something else. We can go.
No, I think we hopped into some questions here. Do you have something else, Alex?
I think the only thing we didn't talk about was just kind of what is happening in Congress generally with Dreamers. I don't know if we want to talk about that. There's not a whole lot, I don't think.
No, and I was saying that I hadn't had an opportunity to read the NDAA. I think everybody was saying that if immigration action was going to take place, it really had to be a writer on that bill. I think that the text of that bill just came out a couple of hours ago, so I haven't had an opportunity to dig in.
Yeah,
but it seemed like there was more losers than winners in there, so which seems to be the case for immigrants too frequently.
Yeah, I noticed that Bloomberg government had it last night, but I'm not a subscriber, and I couldn't pay for it just on principle. I'm like, this is my government. Why should I have to pay for proposed legislation? It's a little crazy. I don't blame Bloomberg. It's their business model, but you would think that would be released publicly by Congress.
I think Bloomberg has enough money. Let's say at least could do something good for once.
That is true. That little guy is doing all right.
He's just fine.
So, and let's go with everybody's very favorite first question. What's up with DV 2021? And since I answer that with such regularity, I'll go ahead and take it. If you are a good luck plaintiff, or you were a DV 2021 selectee who was waiting for a visa at a specific embassy that was covered by the Ray order, then your DV 2021 journey may be continuing. However, you must wait until the Circuit Court of Appeals for the District Court of Columbia rules on the appeal, because the Biden administration is appealed all of our victories for the DV 2020 and 2021 selectees. So we have to wait for the appeals to know what happens, the outcomes of the appeals. Anybody want to add anything?
Yeah, we're sitting here.
We're waiting.
Twiddling our fingers, waiting. I mean, this is probably the most exciting decision in my life, probably affecting the most amount of people. So I'm just as anxious as everybody else. Very consequential, both for the applicants that are affected by it and future applicants who may face similar entry restrictions under a different administration. So we'll see what happens.
And I promise that's not the kind of information we would sit on. We're just as anxious. We'll let you know when we know.
I love how it's just universally, what's up with DV 2021? It seems like that's
no way problematic for me, because if you identify yourself as a good luck plaintiff, I could go straight to what's going on with the lawsuit. But if you're a DV 2021 selectee and you do not benefit from the Ray order and you're not a good luck plaintiff, I need to tell you it's over. So
it can't be a direct translation from every language, though. I feel like it has to be an organized effort to use that phrase. What's up with DV 2021? I like it though.
They've worked.
It's colloquial.
I want to find the organizer and have words with him. So, James from Liberia, how are you? Thank you for coming back. We have some questions in Russian. This live is actually not in Russian. However, we will have another live tomorrow, right, in Russian.
Sure.
Right after this one's over, I'll promote that.
Okay.
It looks like Golnaz answered in Russian too, so you should be able to see that in the chat.
Here's a good question.
Chilo says good evening. Okay.
I think we have to reward somebody who actually listened to Curtis, right, and identified what the question was about. So let's reward Faisal. Do Gomez class and Kennedy plaintiffs members have to wait for Meta again to give its order after the appeal court will give its opinion on that? So Gomez class and Kennedy plaintiffs who are included in Gomez class, I think the question is a little nuanced, right? I think we'll have to go back before Meta for Meta to tell the government exactly what he expects from them before we start seeing adjudications. I don't think it will take that long for him to do that. I think he will do that very quickly. But he has ordered the government to act in this case, in Gomez. So I think I can't remember, but his initial order asked them to do that before the end of DV 2022. Is that correct? Am I remembering that correctly? Or before the FY 2022?
Yeah, it's no longer relevant. So
it's no longer relevant, right? The temporal expectation that the court put on the government to complete the adjudication, or the time he gave them to finish adjudicating all 9,000 plus visas. So I think we'll have to go before Meta to get some clarity on what he expects before we start seeing adjudications begin. So it's not going to be like appeal court, then a DV 2020 applicant will be immediately scheduled for, a visa interview.
What's interesting is he did say the court extends the stay only until the DC Circuit announces its opinion.
Right.
So that means that opinion is announced. This stay, would it be automatically rescinded?
Right. Well, I just think the government is not. I mean, there would. I think the government is going to probably seek a motion to clarify what the expectation is before they start re-adjudication. I don't think it's going to happen, but yeah, Curtis is right. Our language is pretty clear that once the DC court rules, but Judge Mehta may have to reinterpret his order based on the appeals court decision, right? The appeals court may say, you got this part right, you got this part wrong. You know, he has to go back and reanalyze it. And then we may have to, so I think Mehta's going to have to weigh in at least in some way before adjudication starts.
Right. You have to wait and see.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I wish we could have more clarity on this so we could get going. But we do have to wait and see.
Here we got another 2020 winner. Interviews postponed from April. I could not find my data on the SEAC. Could the data be in the embassy? The second question is, can I renew the DS-260? Your DV 2020 case, like the DV 2020 cases of all 2020 selectees, is frozen. You're not going to access the data until the appeals court rules on their decision, okay? You're not going to access your DS-260. You're not going to do anything with your case. Just stay out of trouble and stay patient, and hopefully something will be happening soon. But there's nothing you can do with your individual case at this time. There's no reason to email KCC. There's no reason to email the embassy. Actually, now that I bring that up, DV 2020, 2021 selectees, I don't even think you're ever going to have to deal with KCC again, because the government's told us that they deployed the cases to embassies.
Right. What deployed means, nobody really knows, but
we tried to figure that out.
Curtis, it's not for want of trying, though. Curtis is on Josh Press's heels on this issue about to get clarity about what he means there, because their numbers aren't adding up. They're using words that without meaning on things. So he is, has push them to give us more clarity, but without an order, Judge Mehta can't really get straight answers out of them, or Judge Chutkin. We really can't get straight answers out of them until we get an order, but we're going to figure it out.
Right. And so when I was pushing for answers on a lot of questions in the DV cases, it seemed like I was doing it on my own. And what I mean was the Gomez class wasn't chiming in. The attorneys with the other cases weren't. And I circled back around to the Gomez class counsel and said, back me up here. Don't we need answers to these questions? And apparently they've been, this is weird to say, they've been going directly to the government without us to try to get answers to the questions. They're not getting the answers either, but for some reason they want to do their own thing separate from us. Okay.
I kind of like that we're bombarding them from multiple angles, though. Sometimes it's like a war of attrition, just like annoying the right person enough times.
Yeah. But I think the problem, though, is that if I had to respectfully critique the Gomez, is that they're not disseminating the information or the efforts that they're making to their clients, right? And I think that's very important for people who are trying to plan their life, is to have information available. And even if there's a lack of information, to at least understand that there's somebody trying to get this information for them.
Right.
So transparency, something that Morrison Urena has done very, very well at. Maybe you take a page out of our book, Ayla Council.
Okay, here's a question. I'm not sure I know the answer. Hello, everyone. I have a question about my last name. I can change my last name in Citizen.
In the citizenship process? Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. You'll have the opportunity to do that.
And I think it's the only way you can change your first name. I know that's not what they asked, but you can't change your first name through like a marriage-based green card, for example. You'd have to like get your green card, go through the separate like court system to get the name changed. But we've had clients that have changed both their first and last name through naturalization. So yeah, you can.
Be careful. they may change your name without you knowing. So
Yeah, double check your stuff.
Should say it's not the only way to change your last name either. You could go to a local attorney. We actually don't handle this, but who can do it through the county, like the old-fashioned way.
Yep. And I'll
Okay.
also note, because I've run into this with clients before, if you are changing both your name and gender markers, like the process is a little bit different. They might require different documentation, and that kind of varies by your state. Some are better about it than others. A lot of times local courthouses will have like nonprofit groups, like Illinois has one, I think it's the Transformative Justice Law Project, if I'm remembering that right, that will have monthly basically meetings where they help you figure that out. So yeah, it's rad. So, you know, if that's your situation, you know, do your Googles. There's people out there who can help you.
I changed my name as a child, so I sympathize. Okay. Would a DV selectee be impacted if they have a sibling who is undocumented resident in the U.S.? I think the answer is no. What do y'all think?
I think so.
I think the answer is no. The answer is no.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to answer this one. Is it true that the verdict will be given in January 2023?
Well, one thing, let's just hope that you didn't help get that sibling to the United States. So, I mean, there is alien smuggling charges. So, you know, if you did not assist in that person, you know, getting to the United States through, you know, fraud or crossing the border or assisting them, you would not be affected. So there's a caveat there. So just be conscious of that.
Good catch. Okay. Okay, so we don't know when the Circuit Court of Appeals for the District Court of Columbia is going to issue their opinion. We do not know that. No one knows that. People online that are pretending to know that do not know that. Okay. And I'm often asked, when do you expect it? I don't expect it. I hope for it to be soon. You have an expectation when you have something to base it on. And we don't have any information about when that's going to be. Oh, this person's asking if amnesty for asylum seekers stuck in limbo will be passed in this lame duck period and approved by both Dems and Republicans. I didn't know it was being considered. Is that being considered? Amnesty?
I wasn't aware of that.
I don't
think it's being considered.
I don't think so. And not in that context. I mean, obviously some asylum seekers would benefit from, I imagine, from some things being considered.
I think one of the reasons why this is not really practicable is that only, 30% of people that apply for asylum, roughly. I saw that on track reports a couple of days ago. It's 27 or 30% actually are granted asylum. So how would they, and the 70% are not granted asylum. So how could they give amnesty to people that don't have valid asylum claims? I don't think that that's going to happen. So, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this one. Bob Johnson. For the Islamabad lawsuit, that's Naveed versus Blinken. What are the implications of the case being assigned to Judge Reggie Walton? Does he have a pro-family immigration track record? Great question. I have read Judge Walton's immigration opinions. There's one that's quite lengthy, where he did not find for the family, but he looked for every single way that he could to find for the family because he did not think what was happening under the law was fair. And you can just read through the opinion where he's sympathizing with the plaintiffs, and it's an extreme case. I don't know if you read this. You all read this. I want to say that the green card holder's kid decided to join ISIS and then changed her mind, and then Trump wouldn't let her back in the U.S. Pretty crazy case. And he hated that the law did not allow him to come to make things right. And so anyway, I have a lot of respect for him as a judge based on what I've read of his. But even that case where he didn't come out for the plaintiffs, you could see in the case that he really tried to, he dealt with the issues fairly. So.
Yeah. And that's what we like to see, right? Like, even if it's not like the ideal outcome, I always appreciate it when judges engage honestly and actively with the material we put in front of them. Because, it helps us, and I think it helps future cases, to figure out how to help more people.
Right. He hasn't had many cases like this, by the way. I'm working on a motion for preliminary injunction for that case now, and I wanted to see how he's dealt with unreasonable delay claims, which involve track factors. And the only case where he's had to deal with that involved the Chamber of Commerce or something. It wasn't an immigration case, so it was like really hard to make analogies. But even in that case, when I was reading it, I was like, this is a good judge. So, okay. Hello, everyone's still waiting for good luck. Is there any news? I don't know if you heard the last Wednesday episode. There was one snippet of news, a snippet. It's a small little piece. And that is, there's this case that Nicola Glazer appealed. There was a DV 2021 case, I think, called Dade. I forgot for a second. And the Circuit Court of Appeals was supposed to hear that this week. And instead, they canceled that hearing. And they said, we want to deal with the Goodluck Gomez matter first.
Interesting.
And I thought that was a great order, even though it's only one paragraph, because it acknowledged that they remembered us. They haven't forgot about us. So that's the only news. Salah says, hello from the other side. Hello, Salah. Do y'all know what that means?
I think it's an Adele reference.
Either he listens to Adele or he's already been issued a good luck visa back in September of 2021. I don't know. I'm not sure. Don't listen to Adele enough. This is a good one for Rafael. I'll read the question. Can you please tell me whether the decision of the Court of Appeals on 2020-2021 can be appealed by both parties, or will it be the final decision? Thank you.
There is an appeal of a circuit court decision to the Supreme Court of the United States. Whether Satori or whether the Supreme Court has the ability to take that case or not take that case. So there is, I can't tell you whether the decision will be appealed. I think that's something that we'll need to wait until the decision comes out. I anticipate that even if anybody were to try to appeal it, it probably wouldn't be picked up by the Supreme Court, and it will likely be the final decision. And hopefully it's in our favor. We can move on. Can we imagine another 2 years of what's up with DV 2021 would be heart-wrenching to watch, and people suffer that. So some finality in that journey would be great.
Yeah. There is a possibility that there's a step before that where they appeal the decision to the full court. I think there's a Latin phrase for that. What is it? Per curiam? I don't know the Latin for it, but there's a chance they could do that, but usually the full court affirms for whatever the 3-judge panel did.
That's some complex appellate work.
Whenever you're talking Latin, things are going sideways.
Yeah, you're hanging out with the weird kids in law school, so.
Kids who don't leave the library.
Right. Here we go. I love this. Bob, you're asking some good questions. Do you have any tips, advice for Islamabad IR1 petitioner applicants seeking a transfer to a different embassy without having residency? I've reached out for 4 posts, but have not been successful. Bob, thank you for asking this question today. So the first step is to ask NVC and attach to NVC any evidence you have of ties, your beneficiary, or even the petitioner has to the desired interview location country. That's the first step. And NVC will respond to say, are you sure you gave us everything, if they're getting ready to say no. But the other thing is they have a little note in their auto template, auto reply or whatever, where they tell you a substitute for having ties like residency or work permit in a desired country is having the permission of that U.S. embassy. And so you're skipping straight to that part, seeing if you could get permission of the embassy. Maybe that makes sense. What I would recommend is to stay persistent and to continue asking other embassies and then circle back to the embassies you already asked, because a different person will answer the email in the future. Maybe don't do that the same day. That might not work out. But focus on those small embassies, man.
And our office is, I think that's good advice. Embassies without backlogs. But I think, creating a strategy on how to do that is very important. And our office is perfecting that strategy every day. So if you want some help with that and you want to retain an attorney to help you with that, reach out to our office. We'll work with you on how to do that.
Yeah. The other thing that's worth noting is that certain countries now, like more embassies, are starting to resume routine services. So I assume that they're going to have some backlogs, but, as they start to clear those a little bit, we're kind of going to keep an eye on, which embassies are responsive, and hopefully that opens up some options for people.
And I think State Department was bragging about their wait times for
yes, they were
non-immigrant visas.
Right. Those are different lines though, right? Because that's their priority. So
right. So, but at the very least, there's going to be some, and it was a, to the point, it was a worldwide average that was, that they were issuing. And so I think it was 7 days for a student visa and 14 days for a tourist visa, something like that. So they have some capacity to adjudicate visas. Some embassies have more capacity than others. So there could be some wiggle room there for people to get out of backlogged embassies and get them to an adjudication quicker. It requires some resources, though, for sure. The Cato Institute did an article about how adversely affected people are when they don't have processing in their country and they have to travel abroad. And that's saying for, I think, a visa delayed is essentially a visa denied, or having an interview delayed is essentially not having an embassy in your country. So you're going to have some adverse effects of that, even if you wanted to travel abroad. Yeah.
I didn't know that was there. I'll have to look that up. Bob is asking how he could request a consultation for this. Just give me a call, Rafael call.
Yeah, email at info@morrisonurena.com. We have a Twitter bot that you can, a Telegram bot. You can contact Curtis directly on his Telegram, that he has his handle right here on his.
Yeah, on my name, right there. If you put your cursor over my name. So there's a resource on our website. That's why I'm sharing my screen now, to show you that if you go to More and blog, every once in a while, I just drop some information that's helpful. And in August, I put an exhibit that we got from a government declaration in one of our lawsuits that has, I don't know how many, 20 different embassies backlogs. And it was very insightful because it told us things we didn't know, like that Abu Dhabi had a much bigger backlog than anyone expected. Accra, much bigger backlog than anyone expected. Addis Ababa, we all knew it was a big.
We all knew.
Yeah, but then Algiers, there's a backlog of one immediate relative and 0 family preference. I was so shocked by that. I'm still shocked by it. So if you haven't tried the U.S. Embassy at Algiers, it looks like they have one consular officer that has absolutely nothing to do, unless
Or he's doing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or he's so productive that he's not even behind.
Right.
Amadi.
Shout out to peers, whoever that consular officer is.
Yeah, we love you. We love all consular officers, by the way. They're just stuck with these bad policies. That Cairo's got backlogs. Casablanca, not bad. Waiting for 20 immediate relatives at Casablanca is not bad because they have the capacity to issue hundreds of visas per day. They are a monster when it comes, not monster, what's a beast. They're a machine. They know how to issue a bunch of visas. If you look at the statistics on how many DVs they issue per month when they're going, they're crazy. So Casablanca is a good embassy to transfer to. Cotton, no, I don't know where that is, but it's probably a good embassy. Come on, where's that at?
I'm Googling. Benin.
Oh, okay, cool. Never been there. Don't transfer to Dakar. Dar es Salaam, yeah, good. Djibouti, we have a great relationship with Djibouti. It's historically, for the last few years, it's had consulate staff that cares about what they do. It's good, right?
It's certainly functioning.
Yeah.
Take it where we can get it.
Right. Most of your Europe embassies don't have backlogs. Islamabad has the second largest backlog in the system right now. I'm pretty sure. The biggest is the Dominican Republic. Is that Rancho Santa?
No, Rancho Santa.
No, just Santo Domingo.
Santo
But
Domingo. I lived in Rancho Santa. Right. Okay. Sorry.
They just announced that they are resuming immigrant visa adjudications, though. So we'll see.
We know that they did. I looked at statistics last month. They kicked butt. They're doing a good job. Yeah. Kigali, is that Rwanda? I'm showing how dumb I am about geography.
That is the capital of Rwanda.
Nice too. Is if we had wait times, right? I think sometimes backlogs can be a little. I mean, you can definitely tell when there's zero backlog that they're moving cases, right? But sometimes it can be a little confusing to make a determination on that when you see 15,000 at one post, but do they adjudicate 15,000 a month? So there's some analysis there. I wish we had the wait times as well, but you can certainly tell that certain embassies are just going to be much pickier. And with the experience of practice, which our firm has, we know which embassies work and which embassies don't work as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It'd be great if they made publicly disclose the wait times. I wonder if we could FOIA that somehow.
Well, one thing that's frustrating for me is
it's
starting to get dated because this data is from July, and that's five months ago, something. And so, Rafael, we need to do more group lawsuits so we can get more government declarations.
Right.
And or more FOIAs. I'm always down for those.
Oh yeah, Alexandra is really killing it on the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act.
I'm a little ignorant on FOIAs and how they work, and in respect to getting information. Can you pose questions to the government about the statistics that they have through FOIA litigation?
We have a section on our website called FOIA Production for you all that are saying, what is FOIA? It's the Freedom of Information Act. You can request the U.S. government to share records, which includes documents. One of their defenses, though, is you can't make us create records. So the only way you can request statistics is if you word it in such a way to request something that was already created.
And the other thing, too, is you can't, there's like a set of exceptions that they can use for redaction. And one of them that they love to use is they can redact things that are solely about internal operations, staffing, that kind of thing. So you got to be really careful about how you craft the language to make sure that you don't just get like full pages of redactions, because God knows we've gotten those.
So Curtis and Alex, if I pose this question, if Curtis is telling me that they'd have to already create the document or the statistics in which we're seeking, if they had already determined what wait times were, we could FOIA that, right?
Probably.
Yeah, but how are you gonna? What the trick is, narrowly defining what the document is and where it's at and when it happened, and we don't know that, so it's tricky. We can do it, but it's tricky.
Interesting.
Yeah. This is why historically we've done it in connection with like a cable or something that we like know exists.
We know something happened. That's a good trigger.
Yeah. And then NASA records around that. So we want 21 state cable, whatever. We also want internal correspondence about, you know, the implementation of that cable from X to Y date. And then from there, I talk to the government, we talk to the government, and they give us an idea of what they've got. And then if we identify anywhere we can narrow and get the answer faster, we do that. But it helps to have an anchor.
Yeah.
And we'll do one last question. We're at the top of the hour here, and then we'll close it out. But I think this is a great question from Ali. Asylum pending since 2015. I'm stuck in a backlog and waiting for an interview. I have an employer sponsorship-based, employment-based green card. Any way to adjust status inside of the United States? Do you recommend mandamus? Ali, the question requires us to ask further questions of whether you would be eligible to adjust status inside of the United States based on your employment-based green card. A lot is going to be of whether or not you're in lawful status. Curtis kind of explained this a little bit last time on the show. Within lawful status is different throughout the country in different places. But to the point on do I recommend mandamus, if you've had an asylum application pending since 2015, it's been pending for 7 years, and you believe that you have a strong asylum application and you want that application adjudicated, I would recommend mandamus. Now, there's some individuals that don't believe they have a strong application for asylum and simply want to live under the protection of the United States because they have a true fear of returning to the United States. And as long as they're here, then that's a different question. But if you believe that you have a strong asylum application and you want to have that adjudicated, I do recommend mandamus for you. So, Ali, I think you should take advantage of a free consultation. Contact Curtis or I, or info@morrisonurena.com through email, and take some of our time to talk that through with you.
Ali, contact Rafael on that. He's more knowledgeable about the interplay of asylum and legal status than I am, actually. Okay, so that wraps us up with the questions, and so it's been a great show.
I'll do one last question. I think, can I file a lawsuit against the embassy in Dakar? Currently, they're scheduling immediate IL for IR applicants deferred with family presence stuck at May 27th. I was DQ in February 2022. I think you can sue. Contact Curtis. He loves talking mandamus. So,
a lot of times the answer to that mandamus question generally is you can always sue, but what are your odds of success?
Right.
So that's kind of what I want to talk about when you contact me.
All right, guys, this was a great show. I think we had a lot to talk about.
Yep.
Immigration, Twitter is on fire. What was that, Curtis?
Yeah, tomorrow we're going to have a live for Russian listeners. Questions in Russian have priority.
Right. Great. See you guys next time. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks, Joel. Take care.